And this is a show for them and people committed to a life rooted in science and free of supernatural beliefs.
On today's show, we will be reviewing the recent Smoky Mountain Freethought Advance.
And I want to tell you about our sponsors. The Atheist Society of Knoxville frequently has a fun meetup at a bar or eatery. Tonight, it's at Barley's in the Old City around 5:30. Look for the silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion standing upright in the table. And if that's not there, just look for a long set of tables at the back. As Matt Dillahunty at Atheist Experience says, everyone is welcome to our happy hour for food, drink, and conversation. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't.
We will be hearing more about Matt later, but the Rationalists of East Tennessee have several regular monthly meetings. The first and third Sunday meetings of the month are usually lectures with lively roundtable discussions afterwards. The second Sunday, we hold the Skeptics Book Club. On the fourth Sunday, we have a get-together called Reflections. It features a potluck lunch in someone's home.
Later in the show, we'll give you our websites and to visit for additional details, including times and locations. In the news.
Go ahead, in the news.
There's a competition for in the news. According to a report in the Religious News Service, religion is big bucks, worth $1.2 trillion annually to the American economy. Of course, slavery was big bucks
as well,
the Southern economy, actually. Brian Grimm of Georgetown University conducted the first comprehensive study to tabulate the figure. He's quoted as saying, in perspective, it would make religion the 15th largest economy in the world, ahead of 180 other countries in terms of value. He continued saying that this would also make American religion larger than the global revenues of the top 10 tech companies, including Apple, Amazon, and Google. Would also make it 50% larger than the sixth largest oil companies in revenue on an annual basis. He presented this study on the worth of religion of the American society at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., September 14, 2016. His take was that religion is good for the economy. But another way to look at it is that $1.2 trillion is siphoned out of our economy that could be put to better use.
It certainly could be. In other news, Leilani Thomas, a student at Lower Lake High School in Northern California, had her grade lowered after she refused to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thomas said she's been sitting down during the morning pledge for years. She started her silent protest in the second grade after her parents started teaching her about their Native American ancestors and culture. But it was only recently, in the wake of backlash against San Francisco 49ers player Colin Kaepernick and his decision to kneel during the national anthem, that one of Thomas's teachers started to take issue with the teen's defiance.
So ad lib here. A lot of people don't realize that the pledge was written actually to increase the sales of flags. That really was. Protests such as this are happening around the country, and there are teachers lashing out at students for that behavior. Even here in Knoxville, there's a report of a kindergarten teacher threatening timeout for non-participation in saying the pledge. One of the hallmarks of fascism is this kind of jingoistic fervor.
And lastly, in the news, we have a dire prediction. Uri Geller recently offered the following tweet.
Now I'm scared.
And I will quote from Uri. To all my dear friends, whether you like him or dislike him, I have got news for you. Donald Trump will become the 45th President of the United States of America.
Now I'm really scared.
11 is a very powerful, mystical number. Barack Obama, 11 letters. George W. Bush, 11 letters. Bill Clinton, 11 letters. Jimmy Carter, 11 letters. John Kennedy, 11 letters.
Who's next?
Donald Trump, 11 letters. So there you have it. And to cinch that prediction, this election will be held in, you guessed it, the 11th month. Of course, Geller did have to manipulate the names in order to get his required 11 letters, but don't let that diminish this dire prediction.
Just watch out for your spoons, though.
Now, tonight, we will be reviewing the recent Smoky Mountain Freethought Advance, not retreat, that was held over Labor Day weekend in the foothills of the beautiful Smoky Mountains.
A number of nationally known atheist celebrities were on hand to give presentations, as well as some local talent.
To begin with, we had as our MC extraordinaire, Ed Buckner.
I like Ed.
He's great. Besides being an incredibly nice human being, Ed added grace and humor to the weekend. He has been a longtime advocate for atheism, serving as president of the American Atheists prior to the current president, Dave Silverman. He has also served on the board of the Atlanta Freethought Society and the Council for Secular Humanism. Ed asked that we tell viewers that he was the best looking of all the attendees, but when he found out that we would be sharing his picture, he realized that no one would believe it.
But to distract from that, right over here is a pen that you can barely see. And it's this is what an atheist looks like. He maintains that it is a great conversation starter whenever he wears it. He also wrote the book In Freedom We Trust, An Atheist Guide to Religious Liberty, with his son Michael. It was published by Prometheus Books in late 2012.
So Ed's done a lot for atheism. And the advance then kicked off with Patrick Horst from Nashville.
Patrick's a former missionary kid who speaks 5 languages, including Arabic. And he actually spoke Arabic with one of our speakers.
He did.
He was a communications and PR director at Sunday Assembly, Nashville, where he was a founding member of the band in 2013, playing guitar and bass. He's the father of 2 children, which he is raising with a Christian mother, which he's divorced.
Yeah.
His talk was a product of repeatedly getting asked the tiresome question, so you don't believe in anything? Which is a strange question.
But people ask that.
I know,
if you don't believe in God, they think you don't believe in anything.
Anything they believe in. Right. His search for response led him to 5 years of research and reflection. The result is a coherent value system which he has shaped into an elevator pitch to help explain his humanist principles so it can be given quickly to people who ask that question.
And actually, Patrick did much more than just an elevator pitch. He has given this talk, or earlier versions of it, to the NanoCon, or the Nashville Nuns Convention, last March, to Sunday Assembly here in Knoxville, and also to the MiniCon held as part of the National Reason Rally held in Washington, D.C. this past June. Now, Patrick eloquently laid out the basis for how humanists come to have a moral compass without relying on religion.
During his presentation, he shared a video during the trial where he was a custody hearing with the judge asked him if he could be moral without religion.
In other words, can you be good without God? The back of my shirt.
Or should you have your kids?
Right. The judge was concerned about having Patrick with his kids without being a God-fearing person. So Patrick's answer in that video was an encapsulation of the principles he shared in his talk. There is a reason that all the major religions share some version of the Golden Rule. It works for humanity despite religion. Patrick made a strong argument for clarifying one's own principles so that when faced with the question of, but what do you believe in? You can reply with an elegant, eloquent, and compelling answer that highlights a profound love of humanity.
And of course, the Golden Rule preceded Jesus.
Of course.
Considerable amount of time and many other people. The advance was organized in a way that left plenty of time for socializing between speakers, which is not always done in a lot of these types of conferences. Once Patrick was finished, there was a pause before the next speaker began. And the weekend continued with the basic template of speakers, followed by ample breaks to discuss and socialize and go to the bathroom. One of the more enjoyable things about having those breaks was an opportunity to spend time with other attendees and reestablishing past friendships and forging new ones.
In fact, that's one of the things I especially liked, because there were people there that I hadn't seen since last year's advance, and this was a chance to catch up with them. But the advance was tailored after the Freethought advances held by the Alabama Freethought Association for many years outside of Talladega, Alabama. Those July 4th Lake Hypatia events were a gathering place for freethinkers from all over. And over the years, folks could look forward to seeing distant friends at the annual gathering. It was relaxed and refreshing, although the weather was usually really, really hot in Alabama over the July 4th weekend.
Like the one where it was over 100 the whole time.
Yeah.
Another tradition that the Smoky Mountain Freethought advance brought from was the Lake Hypatia Freethought Jeopardy game, which you wouldn't believe how entertaining and amusing it is.
Martin and Cheryl Lewison from New York came to continue this tradition that they had actually carried on in Alabama. They were not the first ones to do the Freethought.
Cheryl.
Yeah. But they did an amazing job of it. They put an incredible amount of work into the game. Now, just like Jeopardy on TV, there were 2 levels. So each level had the complete board with all of the different categories. They were appropriately atheist-themed categories, and the game even included double jeopardy. So you never knew when you chose a category and an answer whether you'd have that double jeopardy coming up.
Side note, Martin actually taught at UT for a while and was a member of RIT many years ago. His wife Cheryl is an emergency medical room physician in New York City.
And that's after she
got a law degree before that. So,
so first a law degree, and then she became a doctor.
So the joke is if you injure her, she can fix herself and sue you both. 12 attendees get to be contestants, and the rest of us watch the fun.
And boy, is it...
try to guess the answer.
Right, but you have to be really quiet, because it's really hard not to just shout out what the answer is when you know it. But this year was especially fun because one of the categories was atheist authors. And the funny spin was Ed Buckner actually got the answer that had as the question, who is Ed Buckner?
He got that one right, too.
He did get it right.
Some of the other contestants were not happy.
No, they thought it was rigged. It wasn't. But one of the other speakers at the advance, Herb Silverman, was also part of that atheist authors category. Now, I can't tell Martin and Cheryl enough how much they add to the advance. This Freethought Jeopardy is a highlight of the whole weekend. Maybe one of these years I'll get my courage up and actually participate instead of just watching the proceedings. But I tend to freeze under pressure like that. So
I don't remember the answers, but usually it's the next day. Our next speaker was Sincere Kirabo, who is a social justice coordinator for the American Humanist Association. A longtime humanist activist who writes about atheism, culture, humanism, and social issues from an intersectional approach. You want to explain intersectional?
Oh, well.
They explained it, didn't they?
They did explain it. I didn't take notes on that.
I'm testing my memory. I think it has to do with the crossing a lot of different paths and areas, working with other groups. His work can be found in the Humanists, Everyday Feminism, and Pathos, among other media.
Now, Sincere spoke on critical thinking and radical humanism, how to achieve secular social progress. This is a really important topic. And one of the issues he brought up is that multiple microaggressions, and he really defined that, perpetrated by others can make you feel really small. Oh.
Sorry.
That's a microaggression. That's not actually what he was talking about. These microaggressions often come from family and friends, though. And even if they aren't...
That wasn't micro.
Oh, sorry.
It hurt.
But even if they aren't aware of what they're doing and that they're creating these microaggressions, they come from
Marginalization.
Thank you. Discrimination, stereotyping, and prejudice. Now, atheists are often on the receiving end of this behavior, but we actually aren't the only ones. Sincere posited that radical humanism is the antidote to a society that has taken the status quo for granted.
He quoted Bertrand Russell, which is a famous person to quote for atheists. Quote, "In all affairs, it is a healthy thing to hand a question mark on the things you have taken for granted."
Yes, he spoke about how radical humanism can help by having a broader footprint and being more socially active and getting involved in social issues. Now, atheists frequently look at religion as a social system that causes harm, but Sincere pointed out that there are other social systems in place too that impact social justice. One of those he highlighted is the systemic concept of masculinity. He-Man.
He spoke about the effects of racism as well.
Indeed, one of the things that struck me about his talk was his example of bystander effect. That people will stand by and let things happen because no one steps forward. He admonished that we humanists need to be the ones that we are waiting for to step forward. We need to step forward, not wait for someone else. We need the ones to break the bystander effect. Be the ones. We need to speak out for issues, give people, especially marginalized folks, a platform to speak and even amplify their voices. And he suggested using social media to do that.
And we can get involved in organizations that give voice to others. The American Humanist Association, which can be found at aha.org, has several initiatives of social justice nature. Act for Women is one that Sincere is involved in, and showing up for racial justice is another.
It's not in the script, but...
Well, you can still say it.
I will. One of the things Sincere talked about with the systemic idea of masculinity is...
It doesn't have to be written.
I know it doesn't. But he talked about rape culture, and that there is an initiative called Men Can Stop Rape that he's been involved with too. And I thought he was very impassioned in speaking about that one. Okay, I think I'm up next, yes.
That's why I'm sitting quiet.
Back to script.
I didn't lose my place.
All right. We actually had another speaker who talked about separation of church and state in the classroom, and she was very funny. She tends to tell a lot of funny stories. We've known her for years. But after dinner on that first day, we heard from local author and comedian John D. Webster. Now, John is a stand-up comedian and the author of five books, which include Nothing's Sacred, an Atheist Quote-a-Day calendar, Blasphemy, Atheist Quotes and Essays by an Apostate, Unreal News, a collection of satire, 10 Decisions I Could Have Made Better Than God. That was a book club selection, I think, this past year.
Actually more than 10. But.
Yeah. Oh, and the rest of that title is And Other Audacious Atheist Articles. And the last one is One Big Joke and 300 shorter ones. Many times John is asked when he discovered his talent for writing. And the answer is that in the 8th grade, when John's school principal held a contest for the students to write a pledge to their school, John's pledge ended up winning. New Hope Christian School now has a pledge to their school which the students recite every morning, and it's written by the author of 5 atheist books. And how's that for irony?
Well, that reminds me of Dan Barker still getting royalties for one of his Christian songs.
A musical. He wrote Christian musicals.
Something about a lamb.
Yeah, Mary Had a Little Lamb, I think.
That wasn't
no, but
yeah, I guess maybe it was.
That was the name of the musical.
Could have a more original title.
But he's still collecting royalties on that, even though he's no longer Christian.
So John shared advice from one of his books in his talk titled "The Top 10 Ways to Avoid Becoming an Atheist."
Now, he shared several 10, as a matter of fact. And he's funny and has a dry delivery that turns the mundane into the hilarious. And of course, among his tips were, don't go to college. In other words, try to stay stupid. And another one of his tips was, don't read the Bible. And I have a blank page. Could.
No, that's instead of reading the Bible.
That's right. It'd be better to look at a blank page.
No, actually, that's one of the best ways to become an atheist. But
oh, yes, reading the Bible. And I'm sure that most atheists know others who've come to that conclusion, the conclusion of atheism, exactly because of one of these downfalls.
that means really reading the Bible.
Really, yes, not just listening to the platitudes offered up.
And it also helps to study what was really meant and was said, biblical scholars have found out, and how it came about. Is it my turn?
Yes, it is.
After John was finished, there was a longer break while the wireless at the lodge, which quit working, was being fixed. So fortunately, they got that going for us. Once that was accomplished, we viewed an odd little movie, to say the least. It's become maybe the bottom of the cult classics.
Actually, several people had complained about the wireless, and I pulled out my computer to show the movie or to get ready to show the movie, and I'm like, oh dear.
That's what happens when the movie was supposed to be the last thing decided for the
But anyway, odd little movie is a good word for it. The movie was titled Heaven, and it was directed by Diane Keaton. In this odd little movie, she interviewed with some weird special effects that weren't too high tech.
Well, it was old.
It wasn't that old.
The
Really,
technology was old.
the technology might have been. But she interviewed ordinary people about their beliefs on the afterlife. Some of those responses were quite...
I'm not sure they were all ordinary, actually, to tell you the truth.
Well, there are actually a couple of movie stars that were interviewed, too.
They weren't ordinary.
No, they weren't ordinary,
I don't feel any were ordinary.
some of the responses were
Not ordinary.
quite extraordinary. And the special effects were just a little strange.
Things got much more serious on the second day of the events with a talk by Osama Albini, who had been a host on the show in the past, this show.
Mm-hmm.
He spoke on living on the rift. While we are telling you a bit about Osama and his talk, we'll take a moment to show the URLs.
And our heads are in the way of the bottom one.
Yes. URLs on the screen. We'll bow down to the URLs.
So do take a moment to write down those URLs.
His talk was the most emotional talk given.
It was, not only did he get emotional during the talk and actually had to stop at one point to collect his emotions, but several of us in the audience also, in fact, I'm getting a little emotional even remembering, how emotionally charged the whole talk was. Now, Usama was born and raised in Jordan to a moderate Sunni family. He studied physics in Jordan and then again in the U.S., obtaining his Ph.D. in theoretical physics. He left Islam during his late teens, though, but went through several stages before becoming an atheist. So that was about 20 years ago, he said. In more recent years, he's become committed to activism, putting himself at considerable risk. He is active in the Arab ex-Muslim online community, where he helps run the Arab Atheist Network, and that is one of the URLs. The Arab Atheist magazine, and he is a member of the Atheist Alliance of Middle East and North Africa. You can visit the links on the screen to help, even though they're in Arabic.
Might add that they've had a lot of difficulty even staying on the internet.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about that.
They've been hacked and removed from Facebook and been fought quite a bit to even have an existence on the internet.
One of the strategies that people who are against any kind of Facebook presence is to report to Facebook that it has questionable or inappropriate content, and if enough people report the content of a group or Facebook page, it's taken down by Facebook until they can investigate. So their page has been taken down several times, even though the reports are manufactured and not based on reality.
So he shared that in the U.S. there are approximately 40,000 apostates from Islam. Even though this is becoming more prevalent, it's mostly online, since coming out in person can be very dangerous, especially in other parts of the world.
Right. We take for granted what it's like here in this country, and we'll get to that in a little bit. I'd like to remind everyone that this is a call-in show. If we haven't covered something that you'd like to hear more about the events, please call and ask a question about it. We'd be glad to...
The number?
Yeah, the number's
Down there.
at the bottom of the screen. But Usama also told us that in Islam, you can be accused of being an apostate by anyone. And once you've been accused, you have only 3 days to repent. So it's pretty much a done deal. Now, some countries, you face execution if you don't repent. In Jordan, it wasn't quite as severe as that, but if you are an apostate, if you become an atheist or no longer believe in Islam, you can't own property or inherit it. And it essentially equates to an act of treason. So it's really woven into the government.
And if you keep track with activities over there, there are a lot of cases where people haven't even had 3 days. They've had like a minute before they were attacked and killed for claims everywhere from just eating meat to saying something bad about Allah.
Actually, Usama also talked about the Charlie Hebdo situation, and one of the magazine actually translated that whole issue into Arabic, so Arabic readers could have access to that.
We haven't mentioned one of the people he showed where he got so upset. It's coming up.
Yep.
I thought it was, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
So he pointed out that most atheist Muslims must write under an assumed name for the sake of safety. Those who aren't frequently hunted down and executed, including a young man who was somewhat advised about staying hidden.
And that, when talking about that young man, I think he was only 18.
Wasn't he in the Israeli army?
I don't remember.
I believe that's correct.
But that's where he had to bring his talk. He had to pause it while he gathered himself again before continuing. But his talk really highlighted how different our culture of religious freedom is in this country, that we don't face those kinds of challenges. We as atheists can come out proudly and fully and not be so concerned about our physical safety.
Well, there are probably certain places you might.
Well,
but nothing to the degree that's. It's, of course, here it's more about social
ostracizing.
Ostracizing.
Right. See, I can help you with words too.
and job consequences.
Right. I mean, we're retired now, but when we were working, we were pretty much in the closet. We joke and say the closet door was open, but we didn't go around just professing our atheism, except in our closed community. But it's very different where, I mean, it wasn't like we were taking our life in our hands by writing letters to the editor or things like that.
There was a financial risk, but...
It was a financial risk, but that's nothing compared to what people in other parts of the world have to face.
No way to compare it. So, the next speaker was Herb Silverman. Herb has actually spoken to RET events
a couple of times in the
past, been quite a few years back. But he described his journey from being an Orthodox Jew raised in Philadelphia to a mild-mannered math professor, accidental activist, atheist, when he moved to South Carolina. He shared his challenge to He has challenged the South Carolina Constitution, which required a belief in a deity, and a Supreme Court victory, which paved the way for allowing atheists to hold public office in South Carolina. He's also the founder of the Secular Coalition of America, which is a very important, Ed Buckner actually mentioned several times, a very important thing that he did, because for that, the Freethought groups were really not working together, very protective of their own little million listen domains. There was a lot of bad history going on in the past. And Herb actually was the one who really started the whole movement to bring them together and even make things like the Reason Rally possible in the future. And he also brought copies of his book, which I intended to bring but didn't.
Oh.
Candidate Without a Prayer.
It's a great book.
Which we have some copies.
We do have copies, but the picture of Herb is especially funny because you see him in a T-shirt, and he rarely wears anything but a T-shirt. He did tell us during his talk that when he went to debate at Oxford, he did wear a tux. So he broke his T-shirt rule for that occasion.
He also told some stories on the side about trying to go into restaurants that required
Right.
And one of them was that had to be gentlemanly attire, I think. And he said, "Ask my friends. He said, I'm not a gentleman." And his friend says, "We can attest to that." Of course, he actually is. But.
Now, Herb shared parts of his book with humility and humor. And one of his funny lines was that when asked during his run for South Carolina governor what would make him believe in God, he answered, "Winning this election."
He has a lot of other good lines. It was one of the more entertaining elections that there's ever been, from some of the comments he had. After failing to attempt to become governor,
Yes, to become the governor.
Which was no surprise.
No. So he didn't have to profess a belief in God after all.
Decided the only way to really challenge the law was to try to become a notary. And he has the honor of being the first person in South Carolina who ever applied to become a notary and was denied.
Now, it only took him 7 years to succeed in becoming a notary. Now, after his talk, he not only autographed copies of his book, but notarized them. Now, it is a really funny book. And as we said, he left behind a few unautographed and unnotarized copies. So if you're interested, let us know.
I'm going to say something else about that.
Well, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, his comment was that it actually took him longer to become a notary than to get his doctorate in math.
Right. So there you go.
So Matt Dillahunty spoke next. His topic was, what about debates?
Now, Matt is the founder and owner of Iron Chariots Wiki and the Atheist Debates Project. He's also been the host of the Atheist Experience. The Atheist Experience. I need to get that right because it's important. For more than a decade. And this show, the one you're watching right now, was modeled after that Atheist Experience show. So Matt is the former president of the atheist community of Austin and a popular debater and educator.
Matt shared the process he uses to prepare for giving debates. And it's a very thorough process.
It is. In fact, he said it takes him weeks, and we're not going to go into all that process, although we have plenty of time, so callers do call in.
And see if we can debate.
We'd love
Surely
to
not as well as Matt.
Not as well as Matt can. But even though many of us are not in the position to actually debate, many of his tips would help in simply having conversations with believers. And one thing he said that really resonated is that many debaters are busy getting ready for their next argument instead of listening to what the other person is saying. He stressed that it is so important to actually listen and to try to understand their position. Only then can you formulate a good response. He also shared that one's tone and tenor make a big difference. He really stressed that you shouldn't make fun of the person you're debating. He advised taking notes and asking for clarification when needed. And these are good things to remember in any kind of conversation about differing worldviews.
Yeah, I think that he did something good that I was going to mention, but I forgot on the way. Maybe it'll come back to me.
Okay, hopefully.
Hopefully. So he also mentioned it makes good sense to define your terms, which is always important, but often isn't done. For instance, are you discussing Christianity? Make sure you agree on a definition because there's a wide range of definitions. And I remember what I was going to say earlier.
Okay, great.
You too often see debaters and politicians debating just making policy statements back and forth. And you see that even in news interviews with especially politicians, where they ask a question and the answer has nothing to do with the question, and the response saying that they didn't answer the question still has nothing to do with the question. So that's an important thing to do in debating, is to make people realize you're not just regurgitating a line,
Right.
but actually thinking about what's said.
And I think that whole point of listening to what people are saying, so that your response matches what it's actually a dialogue and not just two sides, giving their position, so that there's actually give and take.
Were you talking to me?
I was talking to you. Were you not listening to me? So yes, defining terms. And you know what? That made me think of something that our executive producer here on this show has often said, is that one term to define is to get people to define is what they consider God. How do they conceive of God? And if you can pinpoint or narrow down what that concept is for the person you're talking with, it's easier to talk about whether or not that God makes sense.
Unfortunately, a lot of people don't really have a good definition of their God.
Maybe we should spend the next few minutes just trying to define God.
And the discussions, you can see how the definition slips around to try to match any arguments against their position, which generally results in a God that is virtually meaningless.
Right. And the old man in the sky, which a lot of people have that picture of, doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Well, the personal God slowly slides into a deistic God.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Matt also shared some of his magic with us. Matt is a magician as well as a wonderful debater. And in this visual, he's doing a card trick with Shawnee.
She was obviously really delighted with it.
She was. I could not figure out how he did that, and he did not share with us how the trick worked. However, I'm reasonably sure there were no supernatural forces involved.
Actually, he spent a lot of time in between talks, or when other people were talking, practicing, because he says he has to continue to practice. He was sitting there doing one of the breaks, short sleeves, and some $50 in his hand. He was sort of putting them back and forth, and they kept disappearing.
I didn't see that. I wish I had.
I didn't see it either because they were gone. It was really kind of amazing because there was no, he was doing a really good job.
Yeah.
And other times you just spend practicing keeping his dexterity up.
Before we take our program break, which we'll do here in just a moment, I was especially fortunate because I was able to pick Matt up at the airport and take him out to the lodge in Townsend, which is about a 30-minute drive. So I had that time with him, and then again when I took him back to the airport. So we
picked him up.
Were it a we? No, it wasn't a we. You had to stay behind so that you could pick up.
Well, I drove him in. Anyway, never mind.
No, it wasn't a we. It was a me. And I did enjoy that time with him.
He was telling about the truck when I was driving. Oh, well. He was getting a new truck. He was really interested in the truck. It's not relevant.
Oh, I guess you did pick him up because I picked up. That's right. I picked up Herb. Yes.
Occasionally, a husband can be right.
But the wife will admit it. Well, anyway, it's time for us to take a program break. And in case you're just tuning in, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. Freethought Forum is funded jointly by them and by individual contributions. Shows are live most every Tuesday from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern on Knoxville Community Access Television Channel 12 or Channel 194, depending on your local cable network. Tell your out-of-town friends to see us streaming online at ctvknox.org.
You're fortunate. I realized we were on the break list here. This is a call-in show, and we are live today, September 2016, September
20th.
And viewers can call in now at the number on the screen with a short comment or question. Call in now while we go on this informative break.
If you live in or around the Knoxville area and are questioning your religious beliefs or simply believe in one less God than everyone else, well, you're not alone. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun and friendly group of people just like you that meets twice a week at a bar or restaurant. We meet every Tuesday night following the show at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria for happy hour. You'll find our group either inside or on the patio. Look for Richard Dawkins' silver-jacketed book, The God Delusion, standing upright on the table. On Fridays, we meet at Agave Azul or the Beard and Beer Market. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. We all question what we believe at one point in our lives. If this is the time for you, come join us for food, drink, conversation, and fun. Do you find stories of talking snakes laughable? Do you prefer the scientific method over supernatural beliefs? Are you concerned about religious leaders and organizations imposing their values and rules on your body, your family, and the rest of our society? Well, take comfort in the fact that you're not alone. The Rationalists of East Tennessee meets weekly for fellowship and provides a forum for people who support skeptical thinking and rational discussion of these and other issues. To find out more information or to find out about our next meeting, visit us on the web at www.rationalist.org.
The Atheist Society of Knoxville, or ASK, has regular meetups, including evening meetups for fun, food, drink, and conversation. ASK's purpose is to supply a venue for community, camaraderie, and outreach to atheists, agnostics, freethinkers, and other like-minded persons in the East Tennessee area. Our Tuesday meeting is going on now at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria in the Knoxville Old City, just off Jackson Avenue.
The Rationalist of East Tennessee has Sunday activities involving lively, although last time very chilly, air conditioning we don't do much, discussions on subjects topical and timeless. Our last one was actually about given by the head of the space station until recently.
Right, for the International Space Station.
Yes.
It was really interesting.
Once a month we get together for a book club. The title of the October book is The Right Way to Lose a War, America in an Age of Unwinnable Conflicts by Dominique Turney. That's October 9th at 2 p.m. at Books A Million.
And that's on Kingston Pike at Walker Springs.
The public is invited to participate. You need not have read the book, although it helps. Visit rationalist.org to find the rest of the calendar of books. And join us at Books A Million, 8513 Kingston Pike, Knoxville, every second Sunday at 2 p.m.
Both the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee help provide a social outlet where you'll find that if you don't believe in Zeus, Zoroaster, or Yahweh, you are not alone.
You are not alone.
You were supposed to say that with me.
Oh, emphasize it by saying it after.
Oh, okay. So now we go back to our program. All right.
Back to the speakers. Shannon Nebo, co-founder and president of Be Secular, was the next speaker. Be Secular is an apparel company that promotes secularism and humanism with branding, image, and donations to secular organizations. She is also the treasurer of Recovering from Religion, an organization that provides resources and support for people in doubt and those transitioning away from religion. She is a mother, a feminist, atheist, humanist with 2 children who feature frequently in her activism.
She not only has 2 children, but she has another one on the way.
Very much on the way.
Very much on the way. Shannon's talk was Children, Demonic Possession, and You, a Humanist's Guide. She got the audience laughing by starting out with, Children are strange. They act strange, smell strange, and make strange noises.
Shannon also shared some interesting information regarding attitudes towards demonic possession. I was actually very shocked with this and checked it online. According to the Chicago survey, 37% believe in ghosts and 57% believe in demonic possession. Maybe even higher in the South, and actually they're very high among the 18 to 29 group, which was disturbing.
That's really hard.
And we have a caller, so
Okay.
I'm going to push the on button.
And caller, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
And how did you find out about our show?
I'm aware of it through my membership with RET.
Oh, that's great. And have you ever called in before?
No, I have not.
And I take it you're local since you're a member of RET?
Yes, I am local.
And do you have a nickname that you'd like for us to use?
Leah.
Leah. Well, Leah, it's nice to hear from you. And do you have a question or a comment?
Well, I'd like to get your comments. I was at the advance, and one of the speakers, Usama, talked about the dangers and the hazards of being a secularist or an atheist in Middle Eastern countries. And I'm interested to know how you feel about, in comparison, the hazards that, or the lack of hazards that we face in this country.
Do you want to start with that, Carl?
Yeah, well, the hazards, of course, a matter of degree, and being in the Middle East, that's the most extreme degree. Here it's often emotional or financial. It actually reminds me of we were at a convention many years ago in Cincinnati, and a fellow just sat down at our table. He was 30s, I guess.
Yeah.
And he was about to go and talk to his in-laws about his lack of religious belief. And he was really upset and nervous and worried and stressed. And that can really be, families are broken up. We've known people who been married for decades, and when they come out, a wife will leave them, even though that she knows he's a good person, the case we saw. This particular individual in Cincinnati came back the next day and sat down at our table, and he was fortunate because he told his in-laws what he thought, and I think his father-in-law said, well, people believe all sorts of things nowadays, and that was it. So he got lucky.
He did.
But a lot of people don't. And that's, of course, one of the main goals of RET and a lot of the other Freethought organizations is to make people more aware that those in the Freethought community are the vast majority are really good people, and if you didn't know they were atheists, you would consider them ideal citizens, model citizens, and good people to be around.
And I want to address your question a little bit, Leah. We mentioned that Shannon is the treasurer of Recovering from Religion, and that organization is a wealth of resources for people who are facing some of the problems that come about when they do come out to their families. Some, especially youngsters, there are many cases where teenagers are thrown out of the home when they share with their parents that they are no longer religious. So this can be a hard thing to do, even in this country. I mean, even though it doesn't face the same kind of physical dangers that atheists in the Middle East face.
Social alienization can be a big problem. It reminds me of a story at the Reason Rally. I saw a guy out on a Freethought T-shirt of some sort, and I said, I didn't bring a T-shirt, so it's hard for people to realize them with the group sometimes. And he said, well, I'm from Texas, and I can't tell people at work, anybody at work, that I'm an atheist. He says, I can't even tell them I'm a Democrat. So there are degrees of ostracization. I'm sure there have been far further consequences for saying he was an atheist than saying he was a Democrat, but there are all sorts of levels of issues we have to deal with. I think that's one reason the South has a lot of strong Freethought organizations, because there's so much more pressure.
And did we answer your question, Leah?
Yes, you did.
Well-
I appreciate your comments and your information. Thank you.
Well, thank you for calling.
And we need to do we had some problems with sound in the past. Viewers, how do we sound?
That wasn't the question.
Oh.
Is that
We should ask that.
yeah? But Usama, the speaker Leah was talking about, is from Jordan. But in Ask and RET, we also have ex-Muslims from Egypt and Iran and Iraq. So these organizations do provide a haven for people who have come out. But let's get back to Shannon Nebo and talk about her presentation. She used an example from her own childhood to highlight the idea of hauntings and demonic possession. She told this hilarious but poignant story about a doll she had.
Oh,
Now, that's not the actual doll.
no, but it's creepy.
But it is creepy. Now, over time, she came to believe that this little Christmas doll that had a little bell in its hand was either haunted or possessed. It was kept on a shelf near her bed, and there were times at night that the doll's bell would ring. Shannon was understandably terrified, but didn't confide in her parents because of her fears based on her then adherence to Christianity. Then it was only when Shannon was an adult that she told her mother about it, and that's when she learned that the shelf shared a wall with her parents' bed. End of the mystery of the possessed doll.
Various rattling objects.
Rattling objects on the shelf.
So the important message that Shannon gave us was that we can all counteract prevailing culture concerning children by treating all children according to humanist values. As adults, we can help shape the future generations to be caring, able to utilize critical thinking.
Now, the conference ended with my presentation on what's been happening locally regarding activism. And there's been a lot happening with invocations that we've been giving at different government bodies. We've been working with the Freedom from Religion Foundation. In fact, there's a new Freedom from Religion local chapter here in Knoxville that meets the third Wednesday of every month at Earth Fair at 7 p.m. And it's been working on several local issues of separation of church and state. But we don't have time to go into that tonight.
Did you mention the invocations at Oak Ridge?
Oh, yes. On October 10th, there will be an invocation given, hopefully by yours truly, at 7 p.m. at the Oak Ridge City Council. And we want everyone to join in or come and be a witness to that.
Yes, we have a multiple invocation.
Show of support. All right, but it's time to start wrapping things up. So get out your pen and paper. This has been Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Alita.
And I'm Carl. Please send us feedback. Leave us voicemail at 865-272-9060. Or email us at freethoughtforum, all one word, at yahoo.com.
You can see this show on most Tuesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on this Knoxville station and at 2100 Greenwich Mean Time at ctvknox.org.
What are we doing Greenwich Mean Time? I would like to thank our viewers and send our thanks to Riv, Lee, and Leah for technical support and the staff at CTV, KNOX, and all our callers.
Nuns, those who identify with no religion, are the fastest growing religious group in America. Right here in East Tennessee, the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee are places you can find fellowship and fun.
You are not alone.
And neither are we. Thank you very much for tuning in this evening.